Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started and continue to allow participants to join us. Welcome to our Mental Health Awareness webinar, everyone. Today, Stephanie Anderson, Grace Hill's Senior Director of Content Strategy, will be leading our panel of experts in an important discussion on mental health. Here are a few reminders, though. This webinar will be recorded and shared with all registrants via email later. And to maximize our time together, we've got everyone in listen-only mode. Please enter your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll get to your questions at the end of the presentation. Now I'm going to turn some time over to Stephanie Anderson, who will introduce our panelists and get the conversation started. But I want to go ahead and say a few things about Stephanie first. She has 15 years of property management experience. She brings a wealth of knowledge, specializing in revenue management, creative marketing, and employee development. She's a powerhouse speaker, and we're lucky to have her at Grace Hill. And she shares her industry knowledge, motivates professionals to greater success, and disrupts the status quo and out-of-the-box ideas and trends. She's a graduate of the Virginia Commonwealth University, where she holds a English major and Women's Studies. She holds a Virginia real estate license and is certified as a national instructor for an NAAEI. And this time I'll turn the time over to Stephanie.
Lynn, thank you so much. That was a great introduction. I have to say go Rams as a VCU graduate. Anyone who is from Richmond or knows Richmond knows it is a Ram nation. Okay, so I'm really thrilled to be here today, and we're going to have a really great conversation on mental health, and that's such top of mind for so many people now. And I really am excited not only to talk about the topic, but who's going to be joining me here today. Two of my favorites that I have known in the industry for a very, very long time, and so it is really my honor to welcome them both to today's webinar. I want to first introduce Chris Tinsley. Chris is the service manager and company trainer for MAA. If you are anywhere in the state of Virginia, you might recognize Chris, as he is well known for teaching CAMT through NAAEI and doing a lot of other certifications through the apartment association. He is kind of like the maintenance guru that shares all the ins and outs and is a really, really great instructor. I have to give a shout out to him though, because he was just last year, 2020, NAA's CAMT of the year. So Chris, congratulations on that. Huge, huge honor. And I couldn't think of anybody more deserving for that. Chris is joining us from Richmond, Virginia, and he works for MAA and has been there for the past 25 years. Wow, that's just incredible. Also joining us today is my friend Regina Harris. Regina is a regional property manager for Drucker Falk, also based here out of Richmond, Virginia. I actually met Regina many, many moons ago in the Atlanta, Georgia market, and we have stayed connected for many years since. She has worked for a plethora of organizations leading their executive teams, and just has this wealth of knowledge. I always say she has an incredible way with people, and you all know that's my thing, is people. And Gina just has a way of leading people, teaching people, and making people want to excel in their careers. And so, Gina, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Stephanie.
So on our agenda today, we're going to be talking about mental health. In this webinar, we plan to show you how to apply lessons learned from the pandemic for future execution. We're going to describe some ways to prioritize yourself as a leader. We're going to go over resources you can provide to your team, and then explore tangible ways to boost team morale during trying times, which is really, really important. I want to point out this quote to you really quick before we move on. Poor mental health interferes with a person's ability to complete physical job tasks about 20% of the time. 20% of the time. That's huge. It also reduces cognitive performance about 35% of the time. So in case you didn't think that mental health should be top of mind for your executive teams and leaders in your organization, this quote really speaks volumes in terms of your NOI and your bottom line. So if you have company executives that are not exploring the conversation of mental health, this is a great way to start that conversation, is to say the proof is in the pudding. It's in the numbers here. Anthem Healthcare, which many of you might be familiar with if you have insurance through them, they asked last year in 2020, during the height of the pandemic, they did a poll, and not just to those working at Anthem, but those who also use Anthem insurance. And they said, what was the biggest challenge in your workplace in 2020? And as you can see the outline here, what ranks as number one is the support employee mental and physical health. That was a challenge for them. And that could be both personally and professionally, but it was top of mind by 44%. That is really, really huge.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share this last piece of data with you before we dive into our discussion today. Mental health in the workplace has become a hot topic. We know that, we're hearing it, and it's been the case for the past few years, even pre-COVID. But there's no doubt that there is a negative stigma that exists around discussing mental health, and specifically in a professional setting. I like to say it makes people feel uncomfortable to talk about it. In fact, many companies don't even like using the term mental health. They feel like it has a negative connotation to it, which is why we ensured that we are using that term today, not only in the title of the webinar, but throughout today's discussion, is to try to break the negative stigma that's associated with the term. So according to a report by Oracle, 76% of workers believe their company should be doing more to support the mental health of their workforce. While many organizations want to help employees constructively address mental health, they often don't know where to start. And that's a great segue into today's discussion, because we're going to help talk about what's worked for both Regina and Chris in their organizations, and start to give some tangible ideas as to where you can start. Okay, so now I know you are not all here to hear me speak this entire time. You're here to talk to Regina and Chris. So let's dive into our first question. I want you to tell me about one lesson that you've learned throughout this recent pandemic. So the past 14 months and everything that you've incurred. I want you to talk to me about what you learned and where you're going to take that. What one thing would you take, or one lesson, as you move forward in your future leadership? Gina, I would love for you to start us off.
Thanks, Stephanie. And one of these, this is probably near and dear to my heart. And it's one of the things I don't consider it a lesson for myself. It's something that I think I expanded on and learned a little bit more about myself and with my team members. And it's related to communication. We all think that we communicate well and that we're delivering the message well. I think the pandemic kind of put us in a different segue of how we communicate, not being able to be in front of individuals. And because a lot of times body language speaks a lot when you're in front of somebody, and not being able to do that. And one of the things that is important to me is making sure that we're getting that message down to all levels. Down to that groundskeeper or the housekeeper, and those that are generally not on a computer, so they can't sit around and go do the remote thing, getting on the computer or jumping on to email. And I think that was one of the lessons I learned is that we need to make sure that we're getting in front of those individuals and getting that same message about how are we, what is our protocols in talking about the pandemic? What are we doing for our employees? What do we have out there? What are we doing for protection and PPE, and making sure that they understand what our protocols are going to be. So it comes down to communication for me. And I want to say that it's, communicating more than over communicating versus just sending out an email. It was more important that we were over delivering that message. And I think that was most important to me in understanding, is that it didn't matter how many times we said it. Not everybody was truly listening, because in their mind, in the mental state that they were at and thinking about COVID, they had a lot of other things on their minds. And were they truly hearing the message that we were trying to deliver? So it was more important that we continue to communicate about what our protocols were and what we were doing to assist them and what was available to them. And what were the next steps that we were taking? Because as months went on, it started in March and then April, and we're all thinking, okay, it's going to be gone by September, right? Well, no, here we are, May of 2021, and we're still talking about it. And the other side of it is that as we communicated about it as leaders, is that it was important that we were leading by example, and that we were, walking that talk that we were giving, that if, we were requiring PPE, or if we were safe distancing, that we were all practicing that, and making sure. So the communication side of that was not just the verbal, it was the actions that we were doing. And that was really important. It was important to me enough to know that it was a lesson, to know that the employees understood that I took it serious enough and I was showing that and making that action happen.
I think that's great. You know, when you talk about communication, how important is authenticity, Regina, when you're delivering that message to your teams?
It's very important. They need to understand and believe because you're leading them and they look up to you. And that message has to be honest. They have to know that it's heartfelt, and that, you know, the message that you are delivering, you're gonna execute upon it. It can't just be words. They have to know that you're going to deliver what you're saying, especially in those times, because these were uncertain times for everything. I mean, you had employees that they didn't know what was going to happen with their children going to having to do virtual learning. And we're not doctors. We don't know, what the pandemic is going to do, or what if somebody was sick. We were, trying to make those educational decisions for individuals. You had to be able to be honest and heartfelt. Yes. and being open to listening. That's the other side of it as well.
You know, we talk about empathy quite a lot when it comes to, how we treat our residents, but equally as important is that empathy when it comes to what your colleagues and employees are going through.
Correct.
So Chris, talk to me about what you've learned this past year.
My biggest thing is patience, with everyone, including the residents, including the staff, vendors, contractors, whomever we have, because you really don't know what they're going through. What is their stress level, and you just have to give them patience, give them room, and not demand things. I've kind of learned how to change my words around, especially with my site people, instead of, getting them to say, I need you to go do this. Hey, would you mind doing me a favor? Can you go over here and knock this out? But just, patience, changing words around a little bit, and kind of giving them a little bit of space and let them dissect what you're trying to get them to do before you start going off the deep end of, hey, why haven't you gone up here and done this yet? I need you to hurry up and do this, and just, that's the biggest thing, is just the patient side of it. And then keeping an eye on the staff, making sure that they're still doing good. Ask them, questions. If they want to talk to you about personal stuff, then let them talk. If they don't, I understand that on that side of it too. But right. I still want to know, how you're feeling. If you're having a very, my staff, if I've got one of my techs that's having a very stressful day, I'm going to give them a little bit of an easier job, and I'll take over the harder job, on that side of it, so that they, are not getting too overwhelmed off of it. But just patience and communications. I mean, that's the two biggest things that I'm going to take away from all of this, because without those two, Lord only knows where we'd be at this point in time in life.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Agreed.
Something just resonated with me when you talked about, checking in with people and asking them how they are. Oftentimes, I think we are very busy, both personally and professionally, and we ask someone, how are you? And oftentimes we say that because that's the next thing you say. Hi, Gina. Hi, Chris. How are you today? And you're not necessarily saying it to listen to it. It's more of a greeting or mannerisms that you do, versus now we have to ask that question and then truly listen, because we want to know, how are you? And wait for that response for them to tell you how they are. Because just as you spoke about, Chris, that's how you're then going to dictate how you're leading them. I'm talking about taking it easier on them or being a better support system to them. You can't do that if you're not listening.
Yeah, you definitely got to give them some time and give them some space, on it. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely different than what it was 2 years ago. That's for sure.
Hey, that's a mouthful.
Our business protocol has changed. I mean, it's going from how are you servicing the residents, and how are you doing preventive maintenance? How are service teams, especially for our service teams, because they're in the grind with the public, and the expectations where we can't stop maintaining those buildings.
Yes.
And the units, you have to continue to maintain them, and it's how do we give them the knowledge, and to Chris's point, the patience to work through that, and understanding.
And dealing with the residents, too, with everything going on. I've got some residents that want to be home when we come in and do the work so they can see where we are at in the apartment. What did we touch? Because they're going to go behind us and clean. I have
Right.
other residents that do not want to be nowhere near the property when we come out to do the work orders. They want to make sure that it's gone. And, then, that's an added stress level there because, on the service side of it, you set an appointment, I guarantee you within 5 minutes of that appointment, every single time, there's going to be another emergency that's going to come up that I'm not going to be able to get to that point.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's a real high stress level there. And I make sure that I have at least one tech who's basically standing around doing absolutely nothing that can take care of that appointment when it comes in, where the rest of us can go to handle that emergency. And that way we can keep the residents happy. We can get everything done like we're supposed to in the time frame that we need to. They can go back to their normal day, come back to the apartment if that's what if they left, and then, now within school, virtual learning and for school, a lot of their work orders are, coming in for appointments at 3:30 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon when school lets out. Well, we may not be able to get to all those appointments at that time frame.
Right.
Because a lot of the jobs are not 5-minute jobs, so trying to balance that workload, with the service manager and property manager, a lot of that scheduling falls on them. And, then next year you get stressed out on that, trying to keep up with all of that, but then also trying to keep the residents happy in the same sense. It's a lot.
Mhm. And then talking them off the ledge after they've been in an apartment that they realize that somebody had COVID.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's having that communication with them and helping them understand, did you wear your mask? Did you properly safe distance? Were you sanitizing? And but still there's that worry, and there it goes back to that mental side of it. It's then they're taking it home, and
Yes.
it affects all aspects.
Man, I mean, when we come out of an apartment, we basically fog ourselves and all the equipment and drop the gloves and drop the mask and gather
Right.
up new gloves, a new mask, and go to the next one. And then when we get done with that, we fog down again and change up everything again and go to the next one. So
Right.
that's one of the biggest things is, adding that 10-minute time frame in between work orders that we're not used to. You run, 6 work orders and 10 minutes every time you got to prep. That's an extra hour of the day right there gone.
Right. So true.
Yeah.
So Chris, Regina just brought up a minute ago about maintenance, and especially maintenance working on the front line. How did you and your other maintenance professionals, that whether they're at your property, in your company, or just in the industry, how do you feel when everyone around you is talking about work from home, work from home, work from home, and you don't have that option? How did that feel, and how does that put into perspective in terms of your motivation every day?
Well, I can speak for myself, and probably 50 to 60% of the maintenance that's out there is there's no way we could work from home. That would drive us completely insane. So us, having our normalcy through this pandemic of still going to work Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week, doing our normal thing. I think that's what helped us keep a lot of our sanity through this, because I have talked to a lot of residents that, were forced to work from home. And, they first thought was, oh, this is going to be great. This is, I'm going to love this. I'm not going to have to get up and go fight traffic. I can, just put a dress shirt on and I can still have my pajama bottoms on and all this stuff. Within about 3 weeks, we go back and we do another work order. Well, they're not, they're like, man, I need to go back to the office. I can't handle this. This is, they were like, I can't believe it, but this is actually stressful. So I think for us, maintaining our normalcy and, basically just getting gloves and a mask was, and some spray was the biggest part of our change, but everything else pretty much stayed the same. For myself, that's what kept my sanity in place. I can't speak for everybody, but with myself and my techs on my property, that's pretty much what kept us going and kept us motivated. And nothing really changed other than getting masks and some spray and some gloves. And we just kept on doing our thing. We were a little bit more cautious when we go into occupied units. We do go in for vacant units, and we do a fogging in the vacant unit right off the bat. And then we go in and start doing our turn afterwards, just as a precaution, whether the person had COVID or not. We just do it as a precaution all the way across the board. So a lot of that stuff, is a little bit different off of it, but we got to keep our normalcy.
Yeah, that's really important. You're keeping a schedule. You're, going and doing things. It keeps your mind busy. you know, but I think it's important to note that everyone working on those front lines, regardless of what your position is, you know, we really commend you all for doing that, because it's been very uncertain times, and especially at the height of the pandemic when none of us really knew what was going on and what the future would hold. Really, you know, a lot of heroes working in this industry, no doubt.
Agree.
Yep.
So let's transition just a little bit. You know, let's talk about how you've best supported your employees and your teammates throughout this discussion. Chris, you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, I mean, as far as support, I kind of touched base on it a little bit earlier, but I mean, just talking to my techs every single day. You know, every morning, you know, we take about a 5-minute time just to kind of go over what we're going to do today, you know, and then ask them, you know, how was your evening? You know, if you were on call, did you get anything? You know, if you're not on call, you know, did you spend time with family? You know, and then, you know, during the day, we catch up, you know, right before lunch, right after lunch. And then at the end of the day, you know, we just go over everything, make sure everybody's still doing good. You know, and I go around and I check on everybody to make sure that everybody's, you know, doing okay. They're not having any kind of hard problems with a job, you know, and I'm not one that's going to sit in the office all day. So I'm a working service manager. So I'm out there, you know, changing the faucets, water heaters, painting apartments, turning the apartments, you know, whatever. And, you know, just that part, I think, builds a huge amount of support with your team when you're out there. And, you know, yes, you may be a service manager, but you're the first one in the fire every single time. You know, if there's whatever work order it is, I don't shy away from any work orders. It doesn't matter what it is. I'll be the first one to grab the work order and take off. You know, I've got one of my techs, you know, he's like, you know, are you ever going to let me actually do any work? He said, all I feel like I do is a parts getter. You know, and because that's the way I am, you know, just to show that, you know, by leading, you know, as a leader, you're the first one to go in there to it. So with that, you know, that does set a good tone with everybody that's on the staff. So nobody is, you know, given the bad jobs or the hard jobs or anything else like that. We all work together. We're all going for the same goal. We're trying to keep the property 100% occupied, and we're trying to keep all the residents happy. And in the meantime, we keep ourselves happy because we joke around and we laugh and we play pranks on ourselves, you know, each other all day long, which, you know, keeps us going. That keeps the morale going within the staff. You know, that, you know, yes, we're going through a pandemic. Yes, things have changed, but they've only changed a little bit for us. You know, we still keep the happiness. We still keep the smiles. And, you know, and I ask the guys all the time, probably 50, 60 times a day, you doing okay? Anything I can help you with? Anything's going on? You know, one of my texts today, you know, says, you know, hey, and I may need to take some time off. Okay, whenever you need to take time off. He goes, well, you know, is there a better time for me to take it off or not? No. Whenever you want to take your time off, you take your time off. It's your time. You do what you need to do, get yourself together, and then come back when you get back. Whatever's here will be here. Whatever gets done will get done. Don't sweat this property one bit when you take your time. And that's, you know, that's the big thing. You know, everybody's got vacation times and whatnot. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of travel time and whatnot. Do some stay vacations, you know, stay home vacations, you know, kind of deal. Just get away for a little bit. Take a Friday off, take a Monday off, take a Wednesday off, whatever you want to take off. But just keep yourself together. And for any property managers or service managers or regionals out there, just check on your teams. You know, just a quick 5-minute, you know, phone call. Emails are great, but I'm old school. Give me a phone call or an in-person. We can do in person. We might be 6 foot apart from each other, but we can still do in person. You know, and it means a lot for site, you know, to see the regional or senior vice presidents, you know, come to the properties, you know, and just say, hey, you know, we're here for you. We don't get to see you enough like we used to, but we're still here. You know, that's the biggest thing. That's your support. And we're all a family. You know, we were talking about it before we got on the webinar that there's no place that you can go inside this industry that you don't know somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go to California and know somebody in the industry off of that side of it. So we're nothing but a big family off of this. So go with it. Even for coworkers that don't work with you anymore, have moved on to another management company, I've called them. Hey, you doing okay? You know, everything's going great, because that person may come back to you one day. And, you know, just make sure you always have that open door support, no matter what it is. My phone is always on. Anybody wants to talk, I don't care if it's after hours, during hours, whatever. You give me a call, we'll get through it.
That's great.
Yeah, Chris, I think Chris, you said it right too. And I think some of it's always asking that question. How it's getting down to the personal side of it. I think this really, it opened that door for us to how are you? How is your family? How is virtual, school going? Is there anything that we can do for you? And it's whether it's personal or professional, just opening that up and being there and being present and listening. Just listening, I think, is a bigger support than anything. Just knowing that they have another out or an avenue to voice their concerns. The other side of it is reminding the team members, like Chris had said, is use your vacation and your sick leave. It's there for a reason. It's not, don't build it up to this is the time to use it. And if you are not feeling well, it's okay to stay home. And you have to give them that assurance that it's okay to call out sick. And in the past, it's like, okay, we're so busy, you cannot not be here. We'll figure it out. You've got to be able to, and especially not knowing whether is it a cold or is it allergies or whatever it may be. If you're not feeling well and you're not 100%, it's better to be at 100% at work. Take that time to rest and recuperate and come back the next day when you can be 100%. Just and supporting those team members and knowing that it's okay to call out and use that time. And do pre-schedule your vacation. We have 6 months, 7 months left out of the year. Do it. You've got that time. There's a lot of places you can go to, what Chris had just said, that it can be stay vacations. Stay at home and do some DIY projects, whatever it is. Go to the local parks, take a week at home. It's okay to sit on the couch and read a book, to do those kinds of things. But supporting them and knowing the adjustments we had to make in working remotely and doing the virtual learning, giving them that kind of support and knowing that we had to work with less in the office. We also, we allowed under the work remote, we actually staggered schedules so that during that time that if we had an office team of 4, 2 would work at home 2 days, 2 at home and 2 in the office. And we kind of staggered that. So if somebody did get exposed, it wasn't that we lost the entire staff, and knowing that was there. One of the things that we recently done now that things are beginning to loosen up and the vaccines are out there, DNF Drucker Falk is putting out there for those employees that get vaccinated and they have full vaccination, that they're getting an extra day off of vacation added to their time. And just letting them know we're supporting that and we're moving that through and trying to get it so that, one day we will get back to some type of normalcy. I don't think it's going to be 100% normal, but I think it gets us there. And it's a relief in the mindset of individuals that, hey, I do work with it. All my teammates are all vaccinated. So I think that takes some of the worry out of it. The other thing that we did is we brought in our vendors. We end up we'd have them support lunches. Meals always get wins at the end of the day. Feeding the team members wins.
Especially those maintenance guys out here.
Oh, I'm telling you, they love the food. They love the food. Doesn't matter breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
It's free food.
And the other thing we support, and just recognizing those that have gone above and beyond, doing the employee recognition, and making sure that we provided the PPE, that it was there for them.
You mentioned about incentivizing employees to get the vaccination. I love that you're not penalizing them, and I love that you're not requiring it and enforcing it, because there's a lot of legalities around all of that. And it's a comfort level for all employees, but you're saying if you do this, there's something in it extra for you, because that speaks volumes to a company culture in terms of what they want to happen. And, with safety always top of mind. So I think that's great. And Chris, you mentioned some incentivizing as well that your company did last year and this year, right?
Yeah, last year we got an extra week of vacation, and then this year they're giving us an extra day and a half when you get vaccinated.
Yep.
Wow. It's the little things that are extremely powerful for people. Oftentimes you'll have employees that want to hoard their time, even pre-COVID. They worry about what if, what if something happens? What if I need that time? What if I have to take someone sick or myself? And, we need those mental health days more than ever. In fact, some companies, offer mental health days separate from vacation and separate from, personal or sick days. And that's because they're encouraging you to take the time that you need when you need it.
It's okay. It's okay. Every individual needs to understand it's okay to take those days. And it's okay to have a day that, if you just want to call it a mental day, because everybody has a bad day and you need that break.
Yeah, and then there's also, you know, a lot of the healthcare providers with Cigna and Blue Cross Blue Shield or Bon Secure, whatever it's called, you know, they actually have now where they have COVID support, you know, so I mean, there is extra stuff that you can do on that if you just need to talk to someone, you know, and you know, a lot of those people, you know, you look at it, they're neutral people. They're not going to sway you one way or the other. They're not a family member that's going to go tell the rest of the family or anything else like that. You know, and some people just need to talk, and you know, and that's enough, you know, just enough to get it out there for someone to hear it and, you know, just, you know, give a couple little pieces of advice and then everything's fine off of it. But, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's out there. There's a lot of resources out there. So if you do need extra support or if you're having a bad time on it, there's plenty of people out there. There's plenty of telephone numbers. There's plenty of websites that you can get extra quick help off of it and then make it so the stress level comes back down. Because that's the name of the game, is keeping the stress level down.
Right.
And you just segued it right perfectly. Like I couldn't have planned that better. And I promise everyone watching, it's not scripted, but that was a great segue into this. You know, we've got some resources on your screen that you can look at to provide employees. I think oftentimes we hear companies worry about the cost of, you know, implementing these. Oftentimes there's things you can do that won't cost at all, but I always encourage people to think about what it's going to cost when you lose that employee, whether they leave completely or they just become less productive. You're actually losing more in those scenarios than you are if you were implementing, you know, some of these suggestions. And I would love, Regina and Chris, let's talk a little bit about what your companies may be offering to promote health and wellness for the mind and body, and just any type of resources, even if your company doesn't offer, that you would suggest looking into. Regina, let's start with you.
So at Drucker Falk, we have what we call an EAP program. It's the Employees Assistance Program. And it's something that, it was funny, I was just talking to an employee this morning and she said, why did I know you were going to tell me that at the end of my conversation? And they just know that I'm very passionate about this, because it's you all, and to Chris's point, you need an avenue to go to talk about, whether it's COVID, whether it's you've got something ongoing, you know, personally within your, you know, financing, legally, your child's got something going on. There's always something going on in your mind that you need somebody else to speak to. And it might not be somebody at work. It might not be your spouse. It might not be, you know, your friend. You need a neutral individual, and those type of programs. And I want to say there's a lot of employers that have them, and it may not be listed as an employee assistance program, but there's something generally through your health insurance that is provided. And DNF, we provide this, and it's free to all employees. And it can be used. And if we had a situation, if there was an incident on a site, that we could bring this group in to help the employees cope with it, help residents cope with it. So there's a lot of programs out to Chris's point that you can reach out to and get assistance for. You're not in this alone at the end of the day. There are groups out there, there's telephone numbers you can call to get the assistance. And it's you know, the other side of it, there's other wellness programs that you have within Anthem. We have other wellness programs that we have that are for physical, that we can do we do walk challenges within our company. That are driven through Anthem and through our wellness program that we can track. There's newsletters that are out there. You just have to get those resources and make sure that you're sharing them with the team members. There's so much out there that our team members don't realize that we have. And it's because we don't talk about them as often as we should, or they're not getting down to the right hands. And we just have to we have to communicate all that. We have to make sure we're sharing those resources.
Yeah, that's a great point, Gina. You know, many companies share them during the onboarding process because it's important to share the benefits, but you probably won't remember when you're inundated with information. And then when you actually need something, you want to feel like you have some sort of support and where to go to get it. And keep in mind, a lot of employees may not feel comfortable asking their supervisor directly about that, because if I'm going to ask Chris and he's my supervisor, I don't want him to think less of me that I'm asking for help because something's going on in my personal or professional life. I would rather be able to have those resources at my fingertips. And if I decide later to loop Chris in, but it's really my privacy at that point that I may not want to.
Right. Well, and the other thing too that we forget about is through this past year, Many of us may have not gotten our physicals, our normal physicals that we get. That most of your health insurances give you a discount or some type of benefit for getting that. And that is all part of your mental and your physical side of it, that, you got to get back into that normalcy, and making, just go back and look at the resources that you have through your company and what is available through your health insurance, that you can tap into.
Yeah, and MAA, what we have here is we have a whole COVID section where if you have any questions about COVID, or if you've gone to the doctor and you don't know if you can be released or not, or anything else like that, you have a number and they go over everything with you. If you have any questions or, concerns, or just, need to have a mental moment or anything, that's a whole COVID section right there. Cigna that we deal with, they've got a whole bunch of, new mental awareness, pages on their websites and stuff that you can go to, or like I said before, you can just talk to someone and it's free. It's just part of the program that we have now. So I mean, there's plenty of different avenues that you can find. And MAA, they come out pretty much every day. They have a new part of the email that they send out as far as any kind of new COVID testings, new COVID information, wellness information, mental information. Every day we're getting a new email on, a new place that we can click onto, or a new number we can call on. So, there are tons and tons of resources for that. So, if there's anybody out there, or anybody that knows anybody that's out there that's having, a hard time with this, don't let them suffer. Give them, what Stephanie's got here on the page now. There's plenty of places where they can go. Get them some help. Point them in the right direction. Dial the number if you need to, for them. Put the phone up there to the ear, something. But definitely watch out for your neighbors, your coworkers, your residents, vendors, contractors. Everybody I said before. Just keep an eye on everybody.
And then one of the first indications is that if we have an employee that generally performs very well, and then all of a sudden you've seen a change in them, whether it's their mental or their physical, some people may not be taking care of themselves as well. You have to Chris's point, you need to talk to them. You need to ask them. And if you're afraid to do it, then you need to find somebody that will do it. Say something to somebody.
Yeah.
If you see that person is struggling, so that they can help them. Because if you had an employee that was performing so well, and then through all of this that you've seen a change, to me, I feel like we have an obligation to say something, because that employee is a great employee, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we're addressing that with them. Whether it's, if it's a performance, you do that whole performance conversation, have that conversation. But at the end of it, it's, how can I help you? I see that these things are going on. And you can recommend them to Chris's point, Google it. We all have the phone, Google it. If you don't want to use something through the company because you feel that somebody's going to know something, then refer them to the internet. And maybe print some pamphlets off beforehand that they can have it and they can take with them. At the end of it, we're not doctors, but we're there to help guide them, and give them that assurance that we're there to help support them.
Yeah, at the bare minimum, we got an ear. Bend it all day long. You bend my ear all day long, I'll listen.
Yep. And follow up with them.
Yeah, follow up is key, right? So
Yeah.
making sure that you have consistency in that they know, not just giving lip service, but like you mentioned earlier, Regina, actually acting on that.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, so I want to change up the conversation just a little bit, because we've talked about taking care of our employees. We've talked about, communication, and even with residents. I really want to talk about self-care, because self-care kind of has a little bit of negativity around it sometimes. I'm a mom of 3 at home with 3 kids during a pandemic. If I'm going to go get, my nails done or my hair done, because that might be my self-care, would somebody else see that as selfishness, or she's not prioritizing her kid, or, things like that. And I think oftentimes that happens a lot in the professional setting as well, is we take care of everyone else before ourselves. So when you're on the airplane, what is it that they always tell you? Your oxygen mask drops. You must put it on yourself before you help someone else. But that's hard, because we all want to help each other. And oftentimes we put others in front of ourselves, right? We prioritize them. So I want you all to kind of walk me through, like, how are you prioritizing you? And, how are you taking care of yourselves? Chris, you want to start us off here?
Yeah, I mean, as far as prioritizing myself, I mean, I don't know. I guess I may be weird. I'm not sure, but mine is mine is actually work. You know, keeping the property up and running. You know, keep coming in every day. You know, I guess my well-beingness is being at work. You know, that's my normalcy. You know, I'm all good to go. You know, if you probably took that away from me, then yeah, I would be all over the place. I'd be looking for the 1-800 numbers. I'd be pulling up this webinar right now and looking for your little click on moments that you've got on there for any kind of help off of it. But for me, it's just doing the normal everyday thing and then making sure everybody is good around me. And, you know, and yes, I've gone out and I've done a couple of things just for myself. You know, I've gotten a couple of new tattoos and I've done a little, couple of little quick 2 or 3 hour little vacations for myself for a moment, just by myself, doing my thing, off of that side of it. So, that kind of helps out. And, honestly, if anybody thinks bad of me doing that, then that's just the way that they can think, because myself inside, I feel good about it. So,
yes,
that's it. I mean, I just, do little pieces here and there.
and I think it's all about finding joy, right? So you mentioned getting a tattoo. Now, one might cringe and say, oh, a tattoo, that sounds painful, but it's what brings you joy. And that's you prioritizing yourself and taking care of yourself. So I love that example.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. You want to get your nails or your hair done, that brings you joy off of it. A tattoo would be bring joy off me. So, everybody's got their own joy. And that's the thing. Go find your joy.
Right. No judging.
Nope. No judging at all. Not the first.
No. Yeah.
What do you
and I'll say that at the beginning, it was tough for me. I got into it, but working from home was not for me. It was hard because like Chris, I'm a workaholic. I love what I do. I don't know why. I just love it. It's in my blood, and I can't get rid of it. So I would work all day long and just keep on working. Then I realized that, one, I wasn't practicing what I was preaching. And then two is that it wasn't good for me, because I sat myself at my desk and I was ignoring the birds, the dogs, the husband, the son and the grandkids. And I began to realize that I need to get out and I need to find a way to do what I was enjoying before, because I love gardening. I love getting out, and I do love going out and walking. But the one thing that drove me crazy was the phone. I had the notifications on. And it's like, I had to turn that off. I have not, and I turned it off, and I have not turned it back on yet, because I would get, email notifications. I would get the text notifications. I would get, phone call messages, and I was always looking at it. So it was like a 24-hour, nonstop. And so I had to turn that off in order to decompress. And I found myself, it's, you know what, at 11:30, I'd go out and take a walk. Go around the neighborhood, even if it was for 15 minutes, just to get out from behind the desk to realize what I was missing. Yes. I turned the news off. Eventually I had to turn the news off, because it just became so much. It was overwhelming with all the information, and how did I disseminate it? What was I taking in? And it made me worry even more. So I turned the news off, because it was hard to continue to listen to it. I got little bits here and there. I would look on the internet, or I would watch the evening news for only a couple minutes, but then it went away and I went back to reality TV. Right. But it was hard. It was hard at first getting to that, because it's staying at home and not being able to go into the stores. And I have a situation at home where I have a husband that his system is compromised. So trying to, worried about taking that at home. I had to manage that side of it. And I found myself eventually, I realized, let me go build a bubble somewhere. I found a community that I could build myself around, and that poor community, I felt sorry for them, because I'd end up being there for most of the time. But I built my bubble and I stayed in that bubble. So it got me out of getting into that rut, and making sure mentally that, I was around other people and been able to have general conversations. I ate in a restaurant for the first time about 2 weeks ago. It's been over a year. And so it was being able to go and enjoy that. So it was tough though at first, it really was. But you have to find those things that you enjoy and get back to doing it. If it's doing tattoos, or if it's doing puzzles, or whatever it may be, those things are still there, so you can go back to them.
Okay, so what you're saying, Gina, is that me, you, and Chris are going to get tattoos after this.
Oh, are we?
That's what I heard.
Okay. I'll let Chris get one for me.
You'll be there for emotional
Support.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Regina's our support option. We got it.
You got it. I've watched my husband get them, and I'll watch out. You all can get them.
You know, Gina, you just mentioned talking, you know, turning off the TV and, you know, having to kind of separate yourself from some of those things. And it reminds me of the idea of you are what you consume. So when you, whether it's TV or books or the people you're around, when you're around constant negativity or dark and doom and gloom, you know, it really puts you in not a good mental space. And if you're already going through things like isolation and separation from people, that is just kind of like taking it on, right? To you get to that boiling point. And so I love that you acknowledge that and say, let me cut that off. You know, that can wait. There is a book that I'm going to mention in the resources that I love. You can get it off of Amazon, and it's not industry specific, but it talks about how to break up with your phone. And for me personally, I get anxiety if my phone's not nearby, and not just because, you know, I like social media and I like staying connected to people, but I worry about my parents. I worry about my children. I worry if there's an emergency, is someone going to need me, and how can they get to me as quickly as possible? And it's that overstimulation, right? That you have to know everything at all times. Meanwhile, people survived plenty without all of that back in the day. But I think it just starts, you know, helping with that balance. And you know, having to break up with your phone is one way to do that, to have that self-control. So I love that you mentioned that.
It became a security blanket, I think, and it does become a security blanket. And especially when you are when you're out on site, you know, if you're in your phone 24/7, you're not paying attention to what individuals are saying to you. Are you truly listening? Are you more worried about what's on your watch, or what's popping up that somebody just texted and you're looking at your watch? If you're in front of somebody and they don't feel like you've got it goes back to, you know, authenticity. Are you really being authentic with them? Are you listening to what they're saying? Are you going to be able to, and the other side of it, if you're not at 100%, you can't be at 100% for your team.
Yes. No, you're exactly right. You can't fill up someone else's cup when yours is empty.
Or half full, right?
Yes.
Yep. Agree.
You definitely need to have time. I mean, I've got my phone set up on there at 9 o'clock at night. It goes to do not disturb and it doesn't come back off until 6 in the morning.
Yes.
Yep.
And utilize that technology. You know what made me so nervous, Chris, when people would tell me to put it on do not disturb, I had to go and find out about ways that people could still get to me and call me. You can put in certain numbers or contacts, or you can set it to where if somebody calls you back to back, it'll still come through. Because again, my anxiety would kick in and say, what if there was an emergency? What if someone needed me? So there's ways to take that technology with automation and really use it to your advantage so that you can take a mental break.
Yeah, mine was do not disturb on any kind of apps that we have with the company, emails, Facebook, you know, Messenger, any of that stuff like that gets shut off at 9 o'clock and it's done.
Yep.
The phone, you know, if you call me, the phone will ring, but nothing else will work.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's gonna happen if they made a decision? They made a decision. It's okay.
Yeah.
We empower our teams to do that, and we need to entrust them to make that. It's, you know, it's not gonna it's something that can easily be fixed.
Yeah.
Sure.
And if the service tech can't get in touch with me and he busts a hole in the wall and it wasn't the right spot for a water leak, hey, drywall can be fixed. No problem.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Very true.
All right, so let's do a quick time check. We actually only have about 10 minutes. So if it's okay with the two of you, I would love to open it up to a little bit of Q&A to see if there's anything going on that we can help our industry friends with. And then while we're letting everyone type into the Q&A box, Please ask away anything that you would like to myself, Regina, and Chris. I wanted to point out the mental health resources. We talked about one of these already. We will share this slide deck after today's presentation with everyone. And so you'll be able to click on the links and it'll actually take you to where you need to go. I encourage you to check out NAA, NMHC, IRM, and NARPM's mental health toolkit that was funded by Yardi. It is a great toolkit that talks about isolation, financial stress, pretty much everything that's going on in your personal professional lives. There's podcasts on there, there's webinars, there's things for you to read. So it's a mixed media for you to really digest information in the best way that's most comfortable for you, and give you those resources like we talked about earlier. If you don't want to use your company resources, that is a great starting point for you. The other thing I wanted to mention was at the very bottom there, how employees can mitigate a looming mental health crisis. This is a podcast that I recently found, and it is really, really good. And so I encourage you to check that out, not just if you are going through any issues yourself, personally or professionally, but as a leader in your organization. And I use that term leader. That means groundskeeper all the way up through CEO. You are a leader in your organization. You can help others. And that podcast will help you to know what to look for and how to help people in the best possible way. All right, so let's see. Have we gotten any questions at all? Lynn, let us know if you're seeing anything in the Q&A. Cedric said this was very encouraging. We've actually gotten so much positive feedback in the chat. Great conversations going on here about what people's personal experiences are and what their thoughts are on this topic. So I love that we've had a great chat here.
I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A at this time.
So let's do this. Why don't you, Gina and Chris, as we're wrapping up here, I would love to have each of you just quickly tell me, one piece of advice maybe that you could give to anyone listening about their personal mental health or handling mental health as a leader. Anything that you want to share? And I know this is kind of out of left field here, so I'll give you a minute to think about it. Gina, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just know that you always have some place to go. We've talked about the resources today. If you know you don't feel well, take the steps to do it. Depression, mental illness is real. Or if you see somebody, I said that earlier, if you see somebody that's not acting the norm, do something about it. You'll feel better when you do. And it's okay to know that you have that there's an issue. You're not the only one out there that is going through depression or has a mental illness. There's an array of things that fall under that mental illness, that there's help out there, and you're not in this alone.
Yeah, don't try to hide it. Don't try to keep it bottled up inside either, because all that's going to do is make things worse, and it's just going to keep, getting bigger and bigger and bigger off of it. And, open up, and some people don't like opening up, and my thing I've got here is I've got a notepad. If you want to talk to me about something, but you don't know how to start the conversation, write it down on a piece of paper, fold it up, put it on my keyboard, or clip it on my golf cart steering wheel, or something like that, and if you don't want to talk around with other people, we'll go off on one side of the property, or we'll completely get off the property, and talk about it, anything, but just don't keep it bottled up, just let it out. You have plenty of resources. We're all going through a lot of stressful things. You are not an island on this. We are all big one nation of stress right now. So let everybody understand that we are all there for you on that side of it. But you have to start it. You have to start the conversation one way or the other. Either come out and say it, leave me a note, do a text, an email, something. There's plenty of ways that you can start that conversation, but don't keep it bottled up. Let it out.
Just help out there, whether it's this COVID, or if it's financial, personal, something going on with relationships. It's not just related to this, to the COVID. It's bigger than that, because there's going to be something else that's going to come down the line. Look at this gas thing. People are stressing out about the gas thing. It's like, how am I going to get to work? Just have those conversations. There's always going to be stress in the life, right? So it's just how you deal with it and know that there's always somebody out there you can talk to.
Yeah, in this industry, I mean, like we talked about many times in here so far, everybody knows everybody in this industry.
Right.
That's the thing. You have plenty of coworkers that may not be on the same property as you anymore, or may not be with the same company, but you know people all the way around your area, that you can refer to, and you can bounce stuff off of and just see what's going on and just take it from there. But you're nobody listening in on this, or anybody in the apartment industry, are not an island by any means whatsoever. You've got somebody to always talk to.
Right. Stephanie, I think they said there was 2 questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, Lynn, I'm not able.
Sure. Okay, Stephen Wood, he's getting practical. How do you get the added day if you were vaccinated?
Well, with their company, we just automatically have it. So basically, you would show proof. You got your little COVID sheet that you got. You would actually send that to the HR department, and then you get your day. That's the way my company works on it.
So it's the same thing. Just check with your company to see if it's something that they have. Then it's the same thing for us. If we provide the card that we were given with the vaccine that we received, we just provide it to our supervisor or to the individual that does our time, and then it gets put in through the system that way.
And David asked, how do you balance HIPAA when you are trying to support staff?
Oh, the dreaded HIPAA.
You just go ahead, Chris.
No, I'll let Regina answer that one. Not on that side,
you don't get into, you don't get, if the employee divulges, that's up to the employee, but you just don't ask those questions. How are you doing? It's those simple questions. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And if it gets into that side of it, at the end of the day, if they're divulging it, you just have to remember, you don't divulge it. You do not expose that to anybody else. You keep that near and dear to your heart. And that way, it's only the 2 of you. But but you just don't ask those questions. You don't ask what it is. You just ask how they're doing. You're not asking anything more than that. It's just a general question. It opens it up for conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, and if they want to talk about it, that's fine. But just like Regina said, don't push the issue either. You don't want to come out and ask that. Just like Regina said, just throw it out there, see if it sticks, and if they want to keep talking, then let them keep talking. But definitely keep it locked in a storage room that you never let out.
Right. It's nobody else's business.
Okay, that's all the questions I see right now.
Well, thank you, Lynn. Well, we are just at our time. We have 1 minute to spare, so kudos for us to keeping you on time.